Hi everyone, I'm Dominic from theMSguide.com and I've lived with multiple sclerosis for 33 years. And like many of you, I've heard 1,000 times that exercise is good for MS. But here's the real question. How good are we talking? And if we know it helps, why is it still so hard to actually get started? So today, I'm joined by one of the world's leading researchers on exercise in MS, Professor Rob Motl. His work has shaped what we know about physical activity and brain health in MS. And Rob is in Chicago and has very kindly given up his time. So, Rob, great to have you here.
Dominic, thanks for the opportunity. I'm always delighted about exercise and MS, my favorite topic.
Well, everybody, Rob and I share a love of cycling, shall we say. So, Rob, let's start simple. Okay. What does this science actually tell us? How does exercise benefit people with MS beyond just feeling a little bit fitter?
Yeah, I think that when we talk about the science of exercise, we need to think a little bit about what exercise does to the human body. When you do a single session of exercise, one session of exercise, it acts as a stressor. It actually puts demands on nearly every physiological system in the human body: the cardiovascular system, the musculoskeletal system, including the brain itself. And the reason that that's so important is because when you put exercise and exercise stress onto those systems, it causes those systems to have to strengthen or adapt over time. So every time you do a bout of exercise, it stresses the systems in the human body, and it stresses them in such a way that they're forced to adapt. Now, one of the keys in all this is to think about the brain and the role of the brain in all this. When you're doing a single bout of exercise, the brain is constantly receiving information from the periphery and all your organs. It's taking that information in, it's processing it, it's synthesizing it, and it's then sending out signals back to the periphery to regulate what your body's doing. So you have this system where every bout of exercise you do, it's taking information in, processing it in the brain, and sending signals back out. And that processing isn't just like how you feel, but also it's your cognitions, your affect, your motivations. All the different brain areas are activated in a synergistic manner. So the same thing happens as the periphery. Your brain adapts. It stresses to that single response, not in a bad way, but in a good way. And then it gets stronger. It develops better connections. It strengthens the existing areas, and it makes your brain more efficient. And that directly translates into brain health.
Rob, I think that's good. And the word, some of you may have heard the word neuroplasticity.
Hmm.
And, that's what it is. It's making your brain work. It's whether you're playing chess, works on a bit of brain neuroplasticity,
Mhm.
reading a book, exercise. So, but one thing people don't always realize is that exercise isn't just for the people who can already walk long distances, cycle across continents, or hit the gym. Even seated movement, resistance bands, water-based activity, it all counts, right?
Absolutely. So, traditionally when we talk about exercise, people just automatically turn towards, oh, I have to walk on a treadmill, right? Or I have to go to the
So dull.
gymnasium and lift big, heavy weights. And we try to work very hard to dispel those notions. Yeah, if you can go to a gym and walk on a treadmill, and that's what you prefer to do, do that. But also, if you're someone who doesn't have access to a gym, doesn't want to go to a gym and walk on a treadmill, you can do things within your own house, within your own neighborhood. Stand up from the couch, take a walk around the house for a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Do that multiple times a day, and you have this accumulation of walking based exercise. If you can't walk, you can use your arms on different pieces of equipment. Um, if you do resistance training or strength training, right, you can go to a gym and you can use really heavy stuff, But you can also do this at home. You can use resistance bands. You can even go to your pantry, get cans of vegetables.
I was going to say a can of spaghetti hoops. If you're in a wheelchair and you can just move your arms, keep doing that.
Yeah, and even things that people don't think about. If you're in a wheelchair, just extending the lower part of your leg up and then letting it come back slowly, and again extending your lower leg up and letting it come back slowly, even without resistance, is a wonderful way to strengthen and regain control of your quads or your thigh muscles. Doing things with upper body that our old shoulder circles. Remember those from back in the day when, yeah, those,
Yeah, yeah,
or with your arms to the side, and you're doing
yeah.
those if you can do more resistance. That is all part of resistance training to strengthen your muscles. And you don't need fancy equipment to do this stuff. In fact, during COVID, we learned that
Yeah.
people could do lots of things in their house and be very, very creative. I was actually talking to a friend the other day, and he brought up the idea of milk cartons, the 1 gallon milk cartons that have a handle on them.
They're heavy.
They're
Can you
heavy,
hold them up for any length of time?
but you can start with them empty, and then you can add an inch of water
Oh,
and another inch of water and another
yeah.
inch of water. And slowly over time, you can generate enough weight in there for resistance for improving your strength even more. It's just being clever, being thoughtful, being kind of deliberate and looking around and thinking, what a great opportunity. Wall push ups, right? You don't have to get on the ground and do a push up. You can do a wall push up and strengthen your chest or your pec muscles, right? Um,
Yeah.
you can do.
Hey, Rob, I have personally had 5 different disease modifying drugs because I've had MS 33 years. But the one constant therapy that I've done, a neurologist I know well says it's the least prescribed thing for MS, is exercise, is movement. I have I've never really gone to a gym. I've just done stuff,
Hmm?
and I have, I love riding bikes. I used to climb a lot. I mean, some things I've had to modify because of my MS, 33 years. Some things it's more sensible not to do, but I still do, just get out the door and go for a walk. I mean, I'm one of these people that doesn't like a treadmill, but I, literally, and it's really cheap. Do you know what I think it's the Norwegians, and I'm going to slaughter the spelling. The single hardest part of exercise is the doorstep mile. They call it the doorstep mila,
Hmm?
and it's the getting over your doorstep. So it's would it be fair to say that exercise is one of the very few treatments that improves both the body and the brain?
Yeah, I mean, I think that exercise is the only health behavior that I'm aware of that activates every physiological system in the human body, including the brain, at the same time.
Right,
And,
right.
Dominic, you're right. It's as simple as walking over the threshold of your door, and you don't have to walk far. Like
Yes.
some days, my break is to go walk out to my mailbox, check it, and walk around the house and just kind of look around and be outside for a second and then come in. And that's a nice 2, 3, 5 minute break that I'm moving, and movement is medicine.
Yeah. Let's get real for a moment, though. Most people with MS already know, at least in theory, that the exercise is good for them. But knowing and doing are
Yeah.
two different things. So, from your research, what are the biggest barriers? Is it the fear of worsening your symptoms? Is it fatigue? Or is it just confidence?
So I think it's a balance of barriers and facilitators really that we need to think about. I think early on people see more barriers than they do kind of benefits and facilitators to changing their behavior. So we actually, when we do our exercise programs, Dominic, we always start with the why question. Why are you here? And we don't stop with the simple, I want to get stronger, because that's too easy, right? Why do you want to get stronger? Tell us what getting stronger means. How will that affect you? What will that do in your life? How does that translate into living better, living fuller? And and really digging deep into the meaning and the reasoning behind it. Because without that, no one's going to change. You and
So I've spoken to so many people who say, I'll start when I feel better. But in MS, I think often you need to move first to actually start
exactly.
feeling better. So, how do we flip this mindset?
Well, and that's exactly it. I hear people say, if I start exercising, it's going to use some of my energy. It's going to make me tired.
Yep.
I'm going to be sore. I'm going to, and I don't want to tell people that that's not true. I think that that is true for a little while, right? But that's why I say you have to find your reason, your why, and really understand your why, because that helps you get through that initial period where you are a little tired, you are a little sore. It doesn't feel quite
Mm.
comfortable when you're doing the behavior.
Yeah.
And then it balances it out because as you start to see those benefits come into play, at the same time you see those unpleasant symptoms start to go away, and then that starts to help us become
Yeah.
I don't want to say addicted, but really learning the value of exercise for our own personal meaning.
Hey, Rob, you and I both know that I cycled across Canada earlier this year, but I was stopped by an illness, nothing to do with my MS, that my doctor said you may not exercise for 4 months. And I know what's coming. I want to exercise, but just like you described, it's because I'm sort of out of the rhythm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's going to be back. But let's make this practical. Imagine someone is watching this right now. They're fatigued. Maybe they used to be active, but they've lost their rhythm. Like I feel like I have. What's the very first step you recommend? Not the perfect plan, but just something realistic. The one step,
The first step is get up and move.
right?
You know,
So
most
I just made a video and I said, get out of bed, put one foot in front of the other, and your body will follow.
yes,
Because it's that easy and it's that hard.
yep.
But
Get up
you've got to decide.
and move, and like that will kind of bring people to think, well, what do I have to do? Do I have to get up and move for 30 minutes? Get up and move for a minute, and
Yeah,
then
that's what I'm saying. Rest, but make the effort to get out of bed, then rest, then have a shower, then rest, then have breakfast, then rest. But don't sit in bed. My wife had a great phrase she taught me. She said, "It's bed glue." When you just don't want it, it's like the bed glue is really strong this morning. But you have to break it. So,
and what I would say is do a minute a day. If you're really
mm,
not someone who's been physically active, do a minute or
mm,
two every day this week, right? That's not a lot of time.
mm,
And do it again next week, right? Just to kind of start to
mm.
create this habit. And then the following week, increase it by a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And one of the days, maybe see, can I go for 5 minutes? And
So
when
it's
you're doing this,
consistency over heroics. That's what you're saying.
yeah. And when
Yeah.
you're doing this, write it down. Keep a journal of it. And then you'll see like every day what you're accomplishing, because moving is medicine, but it's also a form of personal meaning and accomplishment. The one
Yep.
other thing I would say is that we oftentimes forget about movement for joy, right? When we were kids, we used to like to go to a playground and do goofy stuff on a playground. We never thought about it as physical activity or human movement or things like that. But we loved it and we would do it, and you go back and day in and day out you
Mm,
do that. And my point in bringing that up is because I think that people need to think about their own physical activity playground. That is creating their situation, their environment that helps them to enjoy physical activity. And that's kind of hard, but I think if we think back to the days when we were kids and we enjoyed physical activity on a playground, try to figure out your own new playground, whether that's a walk or other
right. Yeah.
things that you do. Yeah.
Yeah, do it. What about accountability, though? Do we know, from the research side of things, if groups, classes, apps, physio-led programs, whatever, actually make a measurable difference to Rob? I'm going to do it on my own.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when people talk about classes or social interaction, that's all very independent, right? So some people really need the classes. They really enjoy the social interaction and the support that's there. Other people don't. So, for example, I'm not really someone who likes classes. I just like to go out and exercise on my own. My wife really appreciates classes, so she always wants to go to classes. And if you put me in the class, it would drive me crazy. But on top of that, it really is a matter of the fitness apps and trackers really are quite helpful. So even your iPhone has a natural, it's that little heart shaped thing on there. You
Yeah.
can see the number of steps you're accumulating on a daily basis. I look at that every hour during the day to see what I'm doing. And
Oh, Rob, I turned it off and I got rid of my smartwatch for it because I thought I'm spending my whole life going, oh, what's my SPO2?
yeah, well, I'm not suggesting doing that, but the
No, I
stats,
know. Yeah.
and we actually published a paper that people who use a smartwatch and a smartphone and track their physical activity, they actually meet public health guidelines for physical activity, and they're so much more likely to be physically active than people who don't use those things. Now, is that
One of the insurance companies in the UK, I'm not going to mention their name, gives people Apple Watches. I think they do it in Canada too. I'm not sure about the US. And they're finding that on average, the people who engage with these things, because you essentially have to walk, I don't know, X steps a day or do a minimum amount of physical activity if they give you this. And I think it's a very good thing because there's some accountability. Also, I'm getting something expensive for free. And from their point of view, people are living, I think, on average 5 years longer, they said. And yeah, and it's just by being active. And
but they're monitoring themselves. And that's what
mm,
you're talking about,
yeah,
accountability. These devices allow for accountability because you're monitoring yourself. And you can
yeah,
also, what people don't realize, in my iPhone, I can go back to the inception of when I received my iPhone. I have 6 years of daily data that you can express in a week or a month or, a quarter, to look at
mm,
how you're doing over time. And it really is a great system to track what you're doing and to see your successes. And it's okay if you're doing nothing, you change for a while and you hit a plateau and you just stick there for a while. That's okay. A lot of
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's you're not getting medals for this,
yeah,
but you are, it's just overall, we all have crap weeks and stuff, and you shouldn't beat yourself up. But
yeah.
listen, Rob, this has been brilliant. Okay, for everyone watching, don't overthink it. Start with just one movement today. Message someone, schedule it. You don't need motivation, you need momentum.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Rob, if people want to learn more about your work, where do they go? Because I'll put it all in the description.
Yeah, the easiest way to find me is just go to any search browser, type in my name, and
Oh, you're one of those guys. You're famous.
I don't know if I'm famous or infamous, but you type in my name and put in University of Illinois Chicago or just UIC, and it'll take you to my website. You can learn about our lab and what we're doing. You can learn about ongoing trials. You can also, through there, send me an email. I answer personal emails through that site. They come directly to
Hey,
me.
you're a pretty rare breed there if you do that. Most people feel they can't. Their doctor would just be horrified. It's like, who? What?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
hey,
you
Rob, that's really
have to
cool.
be
I
committed.
really appreciate you giving up your time today because I know you're a busy guy, especially someone who's as famous as you. I didn't realize. So let's let's catch up again soon because I would really like you to come back to the MS Guide and we can talk about some other stuff. Is that okay?
Anytime you have me, you'd like to invite me as a guest, I'm happy to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dominic.